Tonight, we are stepping into the family room where the curtains are clean. The pictures are smiling. The Bible is open. The incense is burning. The lodge ring is shining. And somehow, everybody's truth is still hiding under the good couch. This scroll is for the chosen ones who always felt like they were not raised in a home. They were raised inside a spell with furniture, the kind where love came with conditions. Prayer came with control, protection came with surveillance, and family loyalty somehow meant keep quiet while the dirty doers get dessert. Tonight, the collective is learning why some parents become gatekeepers instead of guardians, why secret circles and old loyalties can turn family into a control system, and why the gifted child is often treated like a problem before they are recognized as the prophecy, because the chosen child was never too much. They were too awake, too honest, too spiritually loud, too hard to program, too allergic to pretending Uncle Somebody's shadow had a retirement plan. And baby, that is where the conjuring started losing its edges. Because the spell only works when the child agrees to stay small. The curse only keeps breathing when the adult keeps calling fear respect. And the family altar only stays powerful while the scapegoat keeps kneeling. But tonight, the tables have turned. The fallen stars are being seen. The false lights are flickering. The old titles are losing their thunder. And the child they tried to bind has become the one with the keys. The first temple a soul enters is not made of stone. It is the home. The first priesthood is not always in a lodge, a church, or a secret room. Sometimes it is the parent, the mother who names the child, the father who shapes the child, the elders who speak over the child, the family that teaches the child what love, danger, God, shame, power, silence, and survival are supposed to mean. That is why the family altar is powerful. Before the world ever casts a spell, the home teaches the soul what spells to accept. A child may be bound by fear before they know the word fear. A child may be trained into guilt before they know guilt is not love. A child may be taught to obey dysfunction before they know obedience can become a cage with good manners. And the chosen child, they feel the wrongness early. They hear the crack in the holy voice. They see the shadow behind the family smile. They sense the lie sitting at the table, eating greens, passing rolls, and acting like it pays rent. That is why the old systems try to rename them. Too sensitive, too rebellious, too strange, too grown, too disrespectful, too emotional, too hard to handle. But the soul knows. The chosen were not born broken. They were born disruptive to what was already broken. And when a family system is built on secrecy, the truth teller will always look like the storm. But storms do not destroy foundations. They reveal which houses were built crooked. Tonight, the collective is not learning paranoia. The collective is learning discernment. Not every parent is a villain. Not every society is dirty. Not every elder is casting. But every soul must learn the difference between love and possession, guidance and control, prayer and domination, family and spiritual ownership. Because the divine never asked you to shrink so another person could feel powerful. The ancestors never asked you to stay wounded so tradition could keep its favorite chair. And your destiny never needed permission from the hands that tried to dim it. The conjuring ends when self-mastery begins. The spell breaks when the soul stops negotiating with cages. The fallen stars appear when you rise high enough to see they were never sons. So tonight, let the old family script tremble. Let the hidden altars lose signal. Let the false authority clear its throat. The chosen child is grown now. The witness has language, the spirit has receipts, and the soul has remembered its own name. The scroll is opening, and the family spell just heard the lock turn from the other side.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 palms of eyes. The golden whisperer, sea star, Devalan see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
This one goes deeper, without handing paranoia a crown and a folding chair. We're naming the pattern, not accusing every parent with a church hat, lodge ring, or mysterious cabinet full of don't touch that candles. Humanity already weaponized family dinners, so let's be precise. The scroll of the parental spell. When the chosen child outgrows the family altar collective, gather close. Tonight we are going into one of the dirtiest rooms in the hidden house. Why some parents of the chosen are attached to societies, orders, churches, lodges, circles, bloodline clubs, secret networks, family covenants, and spiritual systems that seem to work against their own children. And let us say this clean before somebody grabs a broom and starts sweeping facts into folklore. Not every parent in a society is evil. Not every mason is dirty. Not every church elder is plotting. Not every mother with a prayer cloth is doing warfare. Not every father with a ring is hiding a ritual behind the garage freezer. Some parents are just wounded. Some are ignorant. Some are scared. Some are repeating what was done to them. And some knew exactly what they were doing. That is the part nobody wants to put on the family reunion t-shirt. Because when a child is chosen, gifted, intuitive, strange, bright, prophetic, rebellious, spiritually sensitive, hard to control, too honest, too observant, too, why is everybody lying at Thanksgiving? That child becomes a threat to the family system before they ever become a threat to the world. Not because the child is bad, because the child can see. And baby, nothing terrifies a dirty altar like a child with clear eyes. The chosen child is not always born into support. Sometimes they are born into surveillance. Sometimes they are not raised, they are managed, studied, mocked, silenced, compared, shamed, labeled, prayed over with one hand and spiritually handcuffed with the other. They call it raising you right. But sometimes it was not raising. It was programming with a hot comb and a threat. The first spell was not a candle. The first spell was a sentence. You're too much. You think you're better. You're crazy. You're difficult. You'll never make it without us. Nobody will believe you. You owe us. Family comes first. Translation? Stay small so our secrets can stay big. That is the parental spell. Not always ritual. Sometimes rhythm, a repeated script, a shame loop, a family curse dressed like advice, a generational leash with perfume on it. And let us talk about why some parents join these societies in the first place. For some, it is status. They were never honored properly, so they joined a circle that gave them titles, seats, passwords, robes, ranks, offices, and the sweet little ego snack of being important. Now suddenly the parent who never mastered emotional maturity has degrees. Cute. You cannot apologize to your child, but you got a ceremonial sash? That is not elevation. That is cosplay with paperwork. For some, it is protection. They believe the network will cover them, bless them, advance them, hide them, defend them, promote them, or keep consequences away from the door. And when their child starts telling the truth, they do not see a child. They see a liability. So they call the child rebellious. They call the child unstable. They call the child disrespectful. They call the child influenced. No, beloved. Sometimes the rebellious child is just the only sober witness in a room full of spiritual drunk drivers. For others, it is fear. They were taught that gifts outside the family's control are dangerous. If the child dreams true, sees patterns, reads rooms, senses spirits, rejects false authority, questions religious performance, or refuses to bow to the family idol, the parent panics. Not because the child is lost, because the child is leaving the plantation of the mind, and every control system hates emancipation. Now we go deeper. Some parents are not just parents, they are gatekeepers. They guard the family story. They guard the shame. They guard the secret. They guard the inherited fear. They guard the old agreements. They guard the false image. They guard the public mask. They guard the lie that says, we are a good family, so nothing bad happened here. The chosen child comes in like a walking audit. They remember what others deny. They feel what others bury. They speak what others swallowed. They notice who changes the subject when truth enters the kitchen. And that is why the family system often tries to bind them early. Bind their voice, bind their confidence, bind their sexuality, bind their money, bind their mobility, bind their spiritual sight, bind their name, bind their joy, bind their memory, bind their ability to trust themselves. Because the real spell is not always may they fail. The real spell is may they never know who they are. That is why the attacks often follow the chosen into adulthood, because control does not retire when the child turns 18. It just changes outfits. When you are little, they use fear. When you are grown, they use guilt. When guilt fails, they use smear campaigns. When smear campaigns fail, they use pity. When pity fails, they use money. When money fails, they use inheritance. When inheritance fails, they use God told me. Funny how God told me always seems to arrive wearing their opinion's shoes. Humanity really will put divine authority on a personal grudge and act like heaven sent a memo. No, beloved, that is not prophecy. That is ego with a church fan. And some parents cast through community. They do not need to light anything. They just call everybody. Auntie, pastor, cousin, brother, neighbor, old lodge friend, somebody from the board, somebody from the office, somebody who knows people. Then suddenly your name is being discussed in rooms you never entered. That is social spell work. That is reputation magic. That is whispercraft. That is how families build invisible cages. They say we are concerned. But concern without listening is control wearing lotion. They say, we are praying for you. But prayer used to shame, monitor, or dominate is not prayer. It is spiritual stalking with incense. They say you need to come back to the family. But what they mean is, come back to the role we assigned you before you remembered your soul. Now let us talk about the societies. Some societies operate on hierarchy, rank, secrecy, loyalty, oath, silence, mutual aid, shared identity. That can be used for service, charity, discipline, and community. But in dirty hands, that becomes a machinery of control. The parent learns how to value the order over the child, the group over the truth, the reputation over the wound, the oath over the blood. And when the chosen child starts exposing the pattern, the parent does not repent. They report. They recruit backup. They activate the circle. Because to them, the child has violated the sacred rule of the dirty system. Never tell the truth outside the room where the lie was agreed upon. That is why many chosen ones feel like they were born behind enemy lines. Not because their soul is cursed, because their clarity arrived in a house addicted to concealment. And clarity is rude to deception. Clarity does not knock politely. Clarity walks in like, why is the family demon sitting in Grandpa's chair wearing a cardigan? Everybody gets quiet. Now let us name the deeper esoteric layer. In many ancient teachings, the star represents divine origin, destiny, guidance, and inner fire. A living spark, a soul light, a celestial inheritance. So when we speak of fallen stars, we are not just talking about beings tumbling from the heavens with dramatic wings and bad decisions. We are talking about false lights losing altitude. Authority figures who once looked untouchable, suddenly looking very human. Parents who once seemed like gods becoming wounded people with habits. Elders who claimed wisdom but carried manipulation. Societies that claimed honor but protected rot. Systems that claimed holiness but punished truth. Those are fallen stars. Not because we hate them, because we stopped worshiping them. That is the table turning. The conjuring is over when the chosen stops feeding it. The spell breaks when you no longer agree with the story. The altar loses power when you stop kneeling at it. The family script collapses when the scapegoat becomes the witness. And baby, nothing terrifies a false priest like a former sacrifice with vocabulary. Now the dirty ones get confused. They say, you changed. Yes, that was the goal. They say, you forgot where you came from. No, you remembered why you had to leave. They say, you think you're grown. Beloved, you are grown. That insult expired like milk in a hot trunk. They say, you are being influenced. Correct, by peace, by truth, by self-respect, by ancestors who do not need me obedient to dysfunction, by God, source, divine order, and my own nervous system finally getting a day off. That is why self-mastery is the final reversal. Not revenge, not obsession, not proving, not begging them to understand. Self-mastery. Because as long as they can provoke you, they can cast through you. As long as they can bait you, they can direct your energy. As long as they can make you explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, they still have a string on your spirit. So the chosen must become boring to manipulators, peacefully unavailable, spiritually sober, emotionally unprofitable. You do not argue with the altar that tried to bind you. You unplug it. You do not wrestle every flying monkey in the group chat. You leave the circus and let the monkeys update their resumes. You do not keep giving courtroom speeches to people who already judged you in secret. You preserve your breath. You preserve your evidence. You preserve your joy. You preserve your body. You preserve your name. You preserve your future. Because the conjuring was fed by reaction. Now your silence starves it. Your discipline starves it. Your boundaries starve it. Your healing starves it. Your refusal to be pulled back into the old roles starves it. That is why the tables turn. Not because you cursed them, because you stopped carrying their curse. Not because you destroyed them, because you stopped holding up the illusion that made them look taller. Not because you became cruel, because you became clear. The fallen stars are seen when the false lights cannot hypnotize you anymore. The parent who controlled through fear loses power when you stop fearing abandonment. The society that controlled through status loses power when you stop needing approval. The family that controlled through guilt loses power when you stop mistaking guilt for love. The elder who controlled through scripture loses power when you learn the divine does not sound like manipulation. The network that controlled through reputation loses power when you stop handing strangers the keys to your identity. That is reclamation. That is mastery. That is the chosen adult becoming the ancestor they needed. And let us be real. Collective. Some parents will never admit it. Some will age into innocence like they did not run a whole emotional boot camp in your childhood. Some will say, I did the best I could. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes the best I could is a blanket thrown over, I refuse to heal. Compassion does not require amnesia. Forgiveness does not require access. Honor does not require obedience to harm. Family does not require self-abandonment. And grace does not mean letting dirty doers keep a spare key to your spirit. The chosen must learn the difference between love and access. You can love from a distance. You can forgive with a locked door. You can pray without returning to the cage. You can honor your bloodline by ending what your bloodline kept repeating. That is where the real crown returns. Because the spell was never stronger than you. It was older than you. That is different. Old does not mean eternal. Inherited does not mean unbreakable. Traditional does not mean truthful. And this is how our family does it is not a divine law. Sometimes it is just trauma with seniority. So tonight, let every dirty parental spell hear the verdict. The child is grown. The witness is awake. The scapegoat has receipts. The altar has been inspected. The secret room has windows now. The oath cannot outrank the soul. The society cannot override the divine. The family mask cannot cover the ancestral wound. And the old conjuring? Finished, disconnected, returned to sender without dramatic postage. Because the chosen is not here to keep playing the role of the cursed child, the troubled child, the too sensitive child, the black sheep, the family embarrassment, the one who needs help because they refuse to clap for dysfunction. No, the chosen is here to become the healed root, the living star, the clean flame, the one who stands in the ruined temple and says, "This ends with me." And when the fallen stars begin to drop from the ceiling of your old belief system, do not panic. That is not destruction. That is revelation. You are not losing family. You are losing illusion. You are not losing protection. You are losing control disguised as protection. You are not losing your mind. You are recovering it from the people who borrowed it without permission. So, stand up. Wash your name. Guard your peace. Master your mouth. Train your nervous system. Build your money. Strengthen your body. Clean your home. Choose your circle. Tell the truth without begging liars to clap. Because the final spellbreaker is not rage. It is self-possession. The moment you belong to yourself, the old conjuring starts coughing. The moment you stop auditioning for love, the old altar cracks. The moment you master yourself, the dirty network loses jurisdiction. Collective, remember this. A fallen star only looks powerful while you are beneath it. Rise and you see it was falling the whole time. The tables have turned. The child has become the keeper. The wound has become wisdom. The exile has become initiation. And the family spell has met the one thing it could never defeat, a soul that finally knows its own name. The scroll is sealed. For the scroll of the parental spell now collective, let us bring out the receipts. Not the dusty kind from the bottom of a purse that says you bought batteries, gum, and emotional damage in 2012. Real receipts. The kind that show the pattern. Because when we say some chosen children were spelled over, we are not always talking about candles, powders, rings, secret rooms, and somebody humming in a robe like they missed their theater audition. Sometimes the spell was psychological. Sometimes it was spiritual abuse. Sometimes it was family programming. Sometimes it was emotional control dressed up as love. And baby, the research has receipts with page numbers, because apparently society needed scholars to confirm that humiliating children, guilt-tripping them, withholding love, and controlling their thoughts can damage them. Humanity really does make experts prove obvious things with charts. Receipt 1. Emotional and psychological maltreatment is real. The American Academy of Pediatrics describes psychological maltreatment as one of the most challenging and often under-recognized forms of child abuse and neglect. It includes patterns like rejecting, terrorizing, isolating, exploiting, corrupting, denying emotional responsiveness, and mental health neglect. In plain street prophet language, a child can be harmed without a hand ever being raised. The wound can come through words, silence, shame, fear, and control. That means the as a repeated message, you are too much, you are nothing without us, you owe me, you embarrass the family, you are crazy. That is not just bad parenting. That is identity warfare. Say it with your whole chest. A child's mind is sacred ground. When a parent plants fear there, they are not keeping order. They are farming obedience from pain. Receipt 2. Parental psychological control has a name. Research on parental psychological control talks about tactics like guilt induction, love withdrawal, shaming, and manipulating the child's inner world. Studies connect parental psychological control with emotional and behavioral difficulties in young people, including issues with depression, aggression, and emotional regulation. 2. Key my family still has strings on me. That may not be imagination. That may be conditioning. The string might be guilt. The string might be fear. The string might be needing approval from people who only love the version of you that obeys. The string might be a parent who trained you to feel sinful for having boundaries. That is not magic in the movie sense. That is magic in the ancient sense, a repeated force shaping behavior through symbol, fear, language, and belief. In other words, the altar was the atmosphere. The spell was the script. The offering was your self-trust. Messy little operation, wasn't it? Receipt 3. Adverse childhood experiences can follow people into adulthood. The CDC explains that adverse childhood experiences, also called ACEs, can have long-term negative effects on health, opportunity, and well-being. These include experiences such as abuse, neglect, and household challenges before age 18. The World Health that child maltreatment can have serious short and long-term consequences, including mental health effects such as anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. So when a grown NG with the echo of childhood control, that does not mean they are weak. It means the body remembered what the family tried to rename. The nervous system kept minutes from meetings. Your conscious mind was too young to understand. That shaking, that anxiety, that over-explaining, that need to prove you are not bad, that can be the body saying, I learned survival in a house where truth was punished and performance was rewarded. You are not broken because it still affects you. You are healing because you can finally name it. Receipt 4. Spiritual abuse is not imaginary. Spiritual abuse is recognized by abuse prevention and family violence organizations as a form of emotional abuse and coercive control. It can involve using religion, faith, or spiritual beliefs to control, isolate, scare, manipulate, or shame a person. When a parent says, God told me you must obey me, but what they really mean is, my ego wants a throne. That is not divine order. That is spiritual control. When a family uses prayer to monitor you, shame you, silence you, or force you back into a harmful role, that is not holiness. That is surveillance with scripture. When a society, church, lodge, or private circle teaches loyalty over truth, and the parent chooses the group's image over the child's wound, the spiritual house is out of order, because the divine does not need manipulation to be powerful. Only insecure people do. Receipt 5. The scapegoat pattern is the family's favorite smoke machine. Dysfunctional family systems often assign roles. One child may become the scapegoat, the one blamed for exposing what the group refuses to heal. The scapegoat is often treated like the problem because they disturb the family's denial. While popular articles describe this pattern in everyday language, the deeper clinical idea connects to family systems thinking. Families can protect their stability by pressuring members into roles, even harmful ones. Esoterically, the carrying the shadow the family refuses to face. They are not bad energy. They are the mirror nobody wants hanging in the hallway. And that is why the chosen child often gets labeled early. Too sensitive, too dramatic, too rebellious, too strange, too grown, too mouthy. No, beloved. Sometimes too mouthy means the child said the quiet part before the adults finished decorating the lie. The ancient meaning of a spell is not just someone did ritual. A spell is also a binding of perception, a shaping of reality, a repeated word, a symbol charged with emotion, an oath, a command, a fear loop, a name spoken over a person until the person starts wearing it. That is why names matter. That is why blessings matter. That is why curses matter. That is why a parent's words can become architecture inside a child's soul. A parent can speak life, or a parent can speak a cage. A parent can become a guardian, or a parent can become a gatekeeper for the old system. And when secret societies, religious orders, family legacies, or status networks enter the picture, the danger is not the symbol by itself. The danger is when the symbol becomes a shield for harm. When family honor means silence. When obedience means self-betrayal. When respect means never questioning abuse. When forgiveness means giving dirty doers unlimited backstage passes to your spirit. No, that is not wisdom. That is a haunted customer loyalty program. Cancel the membership. Here is the compassionate truth. Some parents were once children who got spelled over too. Some were trained to confuse control with care. Some were raised to believe fear creates respect. Some were taught that image matters more than intimacy. Some joined groups because they wanted belonging, protection, identity, or power after a lifetime of feeling small. That does not excuse harm, but it helps the chosen stop drinking poison while trying to understand the poisoner. Compassion says, I see your wound. Wisdom says, you still cannot keep wounding me. Love says, I hope you heal. Self-mastery says, you will not heal by using me as the altar. That is the table turning. Not revenge, not hatred, not becoming cold. The table turns when the chosen stops reacting like the frightened child and starts responding like the healed witness. The conjuring ends when you stop agreeing with the old role. The fallen stars appear when you stop worshiping people just because they raised you, ranked above you, carried a title, wore a ring, quoted scripture, or knew the passwords. A fallen star is a false light losing authority. A parent who once looked like a god becomes a wounded human. An elder who once looked untouchable becomes accountable. A society that once looked powerful becomes visible. A family curse that once felt eternal becomes a pattern. And patterns can be broken. That is the good news, beloved. You do not have to defeat every dirty hand. You only have to reclaim yours. You do not have to convince the whole family court. You only have to stop testifying against your own soul. You do not have to expose every secret room. You only have to stop living inside one. So tonight, let the receipts speak. Emotional control is real. Spiritual abuse is real. Childhood conditioning can follow adults. Guilt can be a leash. Love withdrawal can be a weapon. Shame can become a spell. But self-mastery is the reversal. A bound child can become a free adult. A scapegoat can become a witness. A wound can become wisdom. A family spell can become an ancestral ending. And the chosen? The chosen do not rise by hating their parents. They rise by no longer letting broken parents define their name. The scroll breathes. The receipts are on the table. And the old conjuring just failed inspection.
Universal Currency Receipt, Architect Musician 3611027, The Graceful Whisperer, Devalan Seal.
To our beautiful collective, from our day ones to every new soul joining this journey, we love and appreciate you deeply. You've turned this space into so much more than a community, you've made it a family. Thank you, truly. Your presence, your energy, and even the smallest acts of kindness have the power to shift the compass for many in ways unseen but deeply felt. Here's to each of you, old, new, and the many more to come. We're just getting started, and we're so grateful you're here with us. With love and infinite appreciation from the collective of Shaman Ahll.
The child who became the Ancestor Collective, let this settle in the bones. Legacy is not just what was handed to you. Legacy is what you refuse to hand down. That is where the chosen become dangerous to every old spell, every family mask, every secret circle, every guilt merchant, and every dusty little altar built on silence. Because a curse does not end when everybody agrees it was wrong. A curse ends when one soul says, "This may have entered through my bloodline, but it will not exit through my children, my voice, my home, my work, my body, or my future." That is legacy. Not pretending the family was perfect. Not turning pain into a museum and charging your nervous system admission. Not becoming bitter and calling it wisdom. No, beloved. Legacy is when the wound becomes a teacher, but not a landlord. Legacy is when the child who was shamed for seeing too much becomes the elder who teaches others how to see clearly. Legacy is when the one they called too sensitive becomes the one with enough heart to end what everybody else kept excusing. Because let us be honest, some families treat truth like it came in without wiping its feet. Truth enters the room and suddenly everybody starts coughing, changing subjects, washing imaginary dishes, and blaming the child who noticed the smoke. But the chosen child was not the smoke. The chosen child was the fire alarm. And instead of fixing the wiring, they tried to unplug the alarm. Classic human behavior. House burning, curtains sizzling, ancestors coughing in the hallway, and somebody still saying, "Don't embarrass the family." Beloved, the embarrassment was not the truth. The embarrassment was what needed hiding. Now the legacy shifts. You are not here to keep rehearsing the family tragedy in different costumes. You are here to become the clean page, the new law, the healed root, the ancestor your younger self prayed for without knowing what prayer was. And that means you may have to grieve. Grieve the parent you needed. Grieve the apology that may never arrive. Grieve the version of family you kept trying to build with people who only knew how to hand you bricks from a collapsed house. Grief is not weakness. Grief is the soul telling the truth without makeup. But after grief, beloved, comes choosing. Choose peace without guilt. Choose distance without hatred. Choose boundaries without performing a TED Talk for people committed to misunderstanding the assignment. Choose tenderness without reopening the cage. Choose joy so loud the old spell files a noise complaint. Because joy after control is rebellion. Rest after survival is rebellion. Self-trust after gaslighting is rebellion. A calm nervous system after years of chaos is a holy uprising. And let this be known. You do not have to become cruel to become free. You do not have to humiliate them to heal. You do not have to expose every old wound to prove it was real. The divine saw it. Your body remembers it. Your spirit survived it. That is enough. But survival is not the final crown. Self-mastery is. Self-mastery says, "I will not become what hurt me. I will not let pain make me dishonest. I will not use spirituality as a weapon because someone used it against me. I will not build a new altar out of old bitterness. I will not confuse revenge with justice. I will become so rooted in myself that manipulation has nowhere to sit." That is when the tables turn. Not when they suffer. When you stop suffering on command. Not when they confess. When you stop needing their confession to trust your own memory. Not when they apologize. When you stop shrinking until they feel comfortable. The old conjuring ends when you stop auditioning for love from people who only clapped when you betrayed yourself. Let the fallen stars fall. Let the false lights flicker. Let the titles lose their thunder. Let the old masks slide. You do not have to hold the sky up for people who kept calling you heavy. Stand in your own name. Build in your own light. Heal without becoming a hostage to healing. And remember this, collective. The child who is bound can become the ancestor who breaks chains. The one they tried to silence can become the voice that ends the spell. The family scapegoat can become the family mirror, then the family doorway, then the family exit sign glowing in holy turquoise light. So close the old contract. Return the shame. Cancel the spiritual subscription nobody asked you to sign. And walk forward with clean hands, clear eyes, and a heart that still knows how to love without handing everybody a spare key. Because the highest revenge is not revenge. It is becoming whole. The deepest justice is not bitterness. It is refusing to pass the wound forward. And the greatest legacy is not proving who harmed you. It is becoming living proof that harm did not get the final word. The scroll is closing. The child is grown. The ancestor is awake. The old spell has lost jurisdiction. And the chosen soul has remembered what every dirty altar feared. A free spirit cannot be inherited, owned, or controlled. The scroll is sealed.
Until next time, your Sea Star Curacy, channeled by 361 10 27, the beautiful whisperer. Our sea star Devalan seal. Apply the news you can use.